Thank you so much. Thank you, first of all, everybody, for coming. I'm so happy to see all of you. I'm going to look at all of you. And first, I want to thank, of course, Blueprint and COJECO and this fellowship that forced me to do all this work. Good work, good soul work. I'm really honored. I was very honored to be a part of this program, and I'm just really honored to present this project here at Marlene Meyerson JCC, because it's a very special place, and JCCs have always been a very special place for me, and you will see why later as I tell the story. So thank you, and Audrey and Alina and Roman, they have been really supporting this project the whole way through. And I'm just really thankful. I'm also thankful to the writers who are going to perform tonight. And I'm thankful to a lot of people who I will thank throughout the night, too. But first, I want to bring you guys into the fold, into this fold that we have going here. We started this project trying to write stories about our immigration, and this could be for other immigrants as well. This specific project is about Soviet Jewish immigration, but in order to do this work, we used a lot of improv. Has anyone done improv comedy? Anyone? Well, after tonight, you can all say, yes, I have, because we're about to do it. So the reason I like to warm everyone up is because I want all of us to be in on this together, not performers and audience, but together as a group. So if you could all please just get up. And do a little spin around and look at your neighbors. Very nice people all around you, right? Okay, we're going to demonstrate for you here. It's going to be very painless, don't worry. But the idea is that we have these comfort zones, and we try to not get out of our comfort zone, which I think is wrong because we're always then uncomfortable. So if you can break forcefully the comfort zone, then you will be even more comfortable as opposed to less comfortable if you make yourself purposely uncomfortable. So we're going to purposely make you all uncomfortable. So if you feel uncomfortable, it's working. So we're going to demonstrate. You guys want to do a circle? This is what we did before we wrote. We also did drawing, but so we're going to do it first, and then you'll do it. We're going to look down. I'm going to count to 3, and when you look up, you're going to look to your right, to your left, to the back, or the front. The first person who you make eye contact with, you're just going to really hold their eye contact and give them a big smile. It could be a fake smile, a creepy smile, whatever, improvise. And then, but hold it for a moment, and then we'll do it again. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Are we all ready?
So I skipped the demonstration.
That was it.
And now try to a stranger. We're going to do 3 rounds.
3 rounds.
Now looking down.
Nadia.
If you ignore a person by accident, it's okay. Forgive yourself. If you get ignored, you're still loved, I promise. Everyone loves you. 1, 2, 3. Reset. 1, 2, 3. Last one. Okay. Now we're gonna do 3 more rounds, but this time,
It's different
this
now.
time, you're gonna scream at the person. Only when you catch their eye. If you don't catch their eye, you can look around the room until you catch someone's eye, or you can observe other people screaming like crazy. But really scream, emote, let it out. Let it.
Should we do a demo? We'll demonstrate this one time, okay? All right. It works like this.
2, 3.
That's how it works. Now you get to do it too.
1, 2, 3. Good job. Is everyone feeling uncomfortable? Yes? 1, 2, 3. Okay, last time.
One more time.
One more
Yeah.
time. Okay. 1, 2, 3. Great. You guys want more, don't you? No, that's it. Thank you. So,
Now I get uncomfortable.
I see Michael Drop here. He advised me and helped me very much. Thank you. He's a big inspiration. And if anyone hasn't seen Stateless, they really should. He made a movie documenting this immigration, and it's beautiful and very inspirational. So,
Also a COJECO inspired project.
yes, so it's a blueprint.
Stateless?
Yes, stateless. Everyone write it down. So we're gonna start with the program. Yay! Olia, I'm gonna get it. We're gonna have 4 stories, then an intermission, and then I will do my multimedia performance. Olia worked so hard, she got injured during this.
But you know, on the other side of my body. So my name is Olia Leibu. I moved to the United States from Kiev, Ukraine when I was 5 years old. And now I will be presenting my story called New Country, but Same Old Struggles. Walking hand in hand with my parents on each side, the thrill of the morning pierced my soul with every step. The day that I was waiting for since we landed in New York after a 6-month journey to the United States was finally here. It was my first day of school in my new country of residence. It was also the first day of kindergarten for all the 5-year-old children of my Marine Park, Brooklyn neighborhood. As we walked from our apartment to my new school, I was accompanied by the comforting silence of my father and the reverberating stories of my mother. My mother was recalling her first school experience in a different country, the USSR, and the joys, but even more, the pains of being a student there. In my first school, my mom was saying, your babushka had to intervene with the principal when she learned I was bullied for being Jewish. The principal was not supportive, and babushka ended up transferring me to a different school. I did not believe it would change anything for the better, until lucky for me, I met Tiotia Vita. You know Tiotia Vita. She was beautiful, popular, outspoken, Jewish, and not at all ashamed of her Jewishness. She made sure everyone knew how proud she was of her heritage, and soon enough, she convinced me of the same. Tiotia Vita's influence changed my life. She helped me regain the confidence that seemed shattered by my first experience. So although it felt frightening to make a change and go to a different school, it certainly worked out for the best. My mom looked at me and smiled. It was harder for my mom. My mom was a Jew in a country that hated Jews. And her identity was apparent not only in her physical appearance, but also in her undoubtedly Jewish name, Mila Rosenberg. Her stories were real. This was why we moved to America in the first place, as religious refugees leaving a country hateful of our ways. But on that warm, early autumn morning, her reality seemed oh so far away. Today was about me, about my first day of school in America, and my heart felt ready and primed, yearning for new friendships in such a different place from my mother's childhood environment, an open and welcoming space. Olga Svetnikova, a stern voice announced, making sure I was in attendance in my new classroom. I raised my hand, smiled eagerly, pronouncing in Russian, "Здесь, here." Cold stares and whispers followed, and for several years became my constant companions. As much as I hoped for my first day of school in the US to be about me and about my connection with a group of open-minded and welcoming friends, it quickly became clear that my closest acquaintance was my family's past. Like my mom, I soon realized I was different. It was apparent that English was not my native tongue. Despite picking it up quickly and testing out of ESL in just a few months, my accent persisted. as did that constant and unrelentingly blatant Russian name, Olga. Soon, I also realized that I was the only Jew in my mostly Irish Catholic class, when each Wednesday afternoon, most of my classmates went on what was called Release Day. Where are they going, and why am I staying? I would wonder to myself. I want to join them so much. I want to be released. I kept wishing over and over in my head, but when I asked my parents to do so, they immediately said, no. At first, I was confused. Why not? I insisted. But soon I learned this was a Catholic religious studies activity for my Catholic classmates. That, of course, was not for me. After all, I was Jewish. What about the separation between church and state? I stewed as I and about 3 other minority children of non-Catholic background stayed in our classroom every Wednesday afternoon, counting down the minutes until the ringing of the final bell indicated our release home. My biggest dream during that time was to blend in, or at the very least, remain unnoticed. But it felt impossible. For some time, I found refuge in the creation of a whole group of imaginary friends who accompanied me in my daydreams, especially during recess and lunch. The names of these friends were the ones I hoped I had: Jennifer, Katie, Kelly, Jessica, and they lived in a beautiful 2-story, luxurious, but also cozy American house. They had everything they wanted: their own rooms, several fireplaces, fancy designer clothes, all of the Barbie dolls and accessories one could ask for, the coolest friends, and masterful American social graces. But besides having everything, they were also very kind and invited me to join them as an observer of their lives. At that time, they helped me feel like I was not alone. One day, in 3rd grade, I laid these friends to rest because when I came to class, there was a girl sitting at an adjacent desk. She was new and looked different than the rest, but to me, she looked quite familiar. Rada Artyomova, announced the teacher, to which the girl raised her hand, and my heart fluttered. Oh my God, I thought in disbelief. It's another Soviet girl. The joy from that first day of school in America finally re-entered my chest. Rada was not Jewish. In fact, she was ethnic Russian. Despite this being a divisive difference in our former homeland that forced my family to America in the first place, on that day of 3rd grade in PS 222 in Marion Park, Brooklyn, in our America, we were one and the same. And with a twinge of that old hack irony, we became very close friends. My mom's stories were real. In the USSR, we were different. But in this new land of ours, we are Russian. That is to say, Russian, Russian Jewish, Eastern European, immigrant. We are all the same. Here, there are many of us, a melting pot of the other, which is why my family came to this country in the first place. A land of promised opportunity, of the free, the brave, but lest we forget, the human, susceptible to the forces of the passions and the will, capable of constructing and deconstructing walls to push the other out. History likes to repeat itself in families, politics, and everywhere else, especially if safety measures are not in place. Let's make art, like tonight, our checking point for the seeming differences that in other contexts are actually similarities to not be the twisted, driving forces of our fates.
Thank you, Olia. Hello, can you hear me? And now, we're going to have Olia's mom in our tapestry of interweaving stories for this evening.
That mom. That mom. Yeah. Now we're gonna hear the real Russian accent.
And I just want to add one thing.
Mila Svetnikova.
is a writer, and she wrote a wonderful book called
The Adventures of Little Yaga and her friends.
It's about little baby,
Not baby.
Baba Yaga, not
it's
baby.
It's a teenager, granddaughter of Baba Yaga. Whoever is familiar with Russian
Baba Yaga?
folklore, Baba Yaga would recognize the granddaughter. But anyway, my name is Mila Svetnikova, formerly known as Mila Rosenberg. And I will read the excerpt from my story called Jew Face, Jewish Mug, or Simply Jewish. Unlike a lot of Russian Jewish children of my generation, whose parents didn't want to traumatize their precious little ones with such information, I always knew I was Jewish. That knowledge was indeed somewhat traumatic. My own husband, Borya, was spared of it until he was 6 or 7 years of age. The revelation came through a rowdy voice and a firm grip of his ear by an angry mom of Syoma Pinsky, who lived on the 4th floor of his apartment building. Syoma was one of those unpopular kids everybody could not help but pick on. He was whiny, snotty, and cowardly. On the revelation day, my future husband, with a group of kids from his neighborhood, was, as always, chasing Syoma, hollering like everybody else, "Little Jew, snotty Jew, Jewish mug." That's when Syoma's mom got a painful hold of his ear and thundered over his head, "Look who's talking. For your information, Borya, in case you didn't know that before, you are as much a little snotty Jew face as my Syoma." My future parents-in-law could not deny that startling fact, and my future husband had no choice but come to grips with that life-changing reality. As I had already mentioned, I was always informed because the words Jew and Jewish were never banned from our household, but used regularly and freely as if they belonged to the normal vocabularies of the intelligent and educated people. It was puzzling, because in most of my friends' homes, those words were never said, or whispered, or substituted by the word French, that seemed much more appropriate to use in the presence of children. The adults would say something like, there is a quote on how many French kids they accept in that college. You know what I'm talking about, right? They would exchange understanding glances, hoping we didn't get what they meant. Of course, there were so many French people in Russia, colleges had to have quotas for their acceptance. In 26 years that I had lived there, I never met even one, except for tourists, who didn't seem to have any intentions of attending Soviet educational institutions. The word French, however, sounded so much more glamorous than Jewish, it was very hard to resist using it instead. Our neighborhood alcoholics, on the other hand, never substituted the word Jewish by any other word. Otherwise, it would lose its cursing power, which was tremendous. When in a drunken brawl, all other curses were used up and spat out, but point was not proven, the words Jew face, Jewish mug, or simply Jewish were thrown into an opponent's face like a charge of heavy artillery, like the last argument so offensive nobody could say anything against it. It was the curse number one, and when used appropriately at the right moment, it granted the user undefeatable victory. So, I always knew I was Jewish and always wondered why. All the kids in my neighborhood weren't, at least that's what I thought, but somehow they knew I was. On occasion, they could tell me, even though you're a Jew, you're not that bad. But a lot of Jews are terrible. They steal people's money and kill babies. I would shudder from such atrocities and put my head down thinking, all the Jews I know aren't bad at all. They're actually very good. They would never steal anybody's money or kill babies or anybody else for that matter. I never said that out loud, of course, because I knew nobody would believe me. How much I didn't want to be Jewish, but Russian, Ukrainian, Gypsy, or even Martian, for goodness sake, with antennas sticking out of my ears and abracadabra coming out of my mouth. I lied that I was only half Jewish, and my mother was actually a Gypsy. With her dark complexion, olive-shaped eyes, and thick curly hair, she was a picture of a biblical Jewish woman, and as I saw it, could hardly pass for Slavic, but quite easy for a Gypsy. Nobody doubted my Gypsy mother, but with unshaken authority, I was informed by one of the older boys that my Jewish nationality was determined by my father. If it was the other way around and my mother were Jewish but father Gypsy, then no doubt I would have been a Gypsy. For me, unfortunately, it was not the case. Nationality is always determined by your father. You should know that by now, the boy stated firmly, and I could not say anything against it. I assumed he was right. He was older. Jewish mug was ringing in my ears like a perpetual curse. Once at a fruits and vegetables store, where my mother liked to take me shopping, two women were fighting over the last box of bananas, rare delicacy in those days. The fight was turning ugly. They were shoving, pushing, and cursing at each other until one of them won, and with a box in her hands, victoriously headed toward the cash register. The other, full of anger and hatred, hollered, "I wish you'd choke on them, you Jew face." The winner, feeling offended like never before, turned around and flung the box straight into her opponent's head, nearly missing it. "You choke yourself, you Jewish mug," she screamed back. None of them were Jewish. Pale, my mother pulled me out of the store. Similar confrontation could erupt anytime, any place, from houses to movie theaters, from libraries to schools, from playgrounds to train stations. I started first grade when I was 6 years old. There was no kindergarten in Russia. On the first day of school, I was excited and frightened at the same time. I was the youngest in my class. Most children were even were 7, some even 8. The teacher seemed nice. She brought us all to our homeroom and showed us to our seats. 2 children at a desk, a boy and a girl. I found myself sitting next to a cute boy with blue eyes and a mischievous smile and 2 adorable dimples. The boy turned to me and gave me a friendly smile. My name is Andrei. What's yours? Where do you live? Do you have any brothers or sisters? Do you like to draw? Do you play any musical instruments? I was so shy, I could only nod in response. It seemed I lost my voice. He, on the other hand, was quite vocal, and soon I knew he was Polish, lived with his mother and grandmother, was a beginner artist. Later, when I saw his paintings, I thought they were masterpieces. And he was taking piano lessons. Later, when I heard him play, I thought he was a virtuoso already. I liked the boy very much and wanted him to like me back. Overcoming my timidity, I was about to answer his questions when the teacher said, "Now we're all going to get acquainted. Each of you will get up and tell us something about yourself. What are your likes? What's your favorite food? What your parents do? And of course, what's your nationality?" In Russia, Jewishness was considered to be nationality rather than religion. I didn't know back then that my entire life in that country, whether I planned for a new school, camp, sport club, college, or job, I would have to answer that particular question, what's your nationality, over and over, again and again, with the sole purpose of being singled out and denied those minimal rights and privileges Soviet power granted all other citizens but Jews. There was a parody on one of the patriotic communist songs that sounded something like this. How vast the country where we've grown, meadows and seas and woods across, everybody feels like it's his own, only if he's not a Jew, of course. I didn't know any of that yet and thought I got a nasty teacher who wanted to humiliate me in front of the whole class, and especially the charming boy I liked stronger by the minute. One after another, every child would get up to tell us his story, and nobody admitted to being Jewish so far. I knew my turn was coming, but I kept hoping that somehow, miraculously, it wouldn't happen. Either the teacher would skip over my name, or my name suddenly disappear from the list, or any other unimaginable wonder occur. I was sitting with my head down, feeling a cold knot in my stomach and shaking strong enough for Andrei to notice. "Are you okay?" he whispered in my ear, right when my name was called. "I love books," I mumbled, standing up. "My favorite food is cottage cheese. My mother is a nurse. My father is an engineer." I stopped, wishing the teacher wouldn't force me to continue. My last name was so Jewish there could not be any doubts about my nationality. I thought I wouldn't have to spell it out, but my teacher, nasty indeed, with a sweet smile of a cannibal, insisted. "Go on, darling. Tell everybody what's your nationality." I took a deep breath. My nationality was a curse word used by our neighborhood alcoholics and angry fruits and vegetables store customers, and substituted for a more decent one in my friends' homes. "Please, sweetie, don't keep us waiting." The whole class was now staring at me. The room turned silent. Jewish, I said under my breath. We can't hear you. Jewish, I said a little louder. We still can't hear you. Jewish, I hollered, and the whole class burst into laughter. The teacher was laughing too. I wish I could vanish, evaporate, fall through the floor and disappear. I sat back down and closed my eyes. Ignore them, they're imbecile idiots. I opened my eyes. Andrei was smiling at me. They're not worth it, trust me. And I did. I trusted him because at that moment I was love-struck and suddenly nothing else mattered.
Hi, everyone.
Can everyone hear?
Yes, I might not even really do that. Hi, I'm Katya Stepanova, and I immigrated from Minsk, Belarus when I was 1 year and 1 month old. And this is a story from my life. Your parents are going to be here any minute, Boris says. I can feel it. He stops the camcorder. That little click rings out in my memory, the sweet sound of 90s plastic popping back in place. I am 12, and Boris is 14, and he is my everything. The wind picks up the leaves on the rooftop, along with the little Bielka candy wrappers discarded by our haphazard fingers. As I try to catch them, a gust blows them farther out of reach. The evening light is sweet, and we are enjoying a rare moment alone. We're only alone because Pasha, my uncle, finally got his visa approved to come visit from Russia. My father hasn't seen his brother in years, so I'm certain they're going to be out late. The dissonance is so clear between our stories of immigration. My family came over as Jewish refugees. My mother's maiden name, our ticket to freedom, Ehrlich. It means honest in German. My father, however, is Russian, Stepanov, the most Russian of all last names, like Smith in America. Their marriage, like all marriages between those identified as Russian in the 5th paragraph of their Soviet passport and those who were identified as Jewish, is controversial. The irony is never lost on me that my mother's inherited Jewish name, which was the source of discrimination throughout her life, became the very reason we were all able to escape in 1992. My uncle Pasha Stepanov, however, who was not a Russian Jew, would wait 13 years for approval to emigrate in 2013. This is year 5. Naturally, they're out drinking. I savor these moments alone in my home and always try to extend them to the last possible second. When my parents are out, there's a quiet. There's this freedom to do whatever I please. There's no need to be constantly looking over my shoulder. And I frequently use these opportunities to spend alone time with Boris, my best friend, my life brother, my childhood love. On this particular evening, Boris and I had snuck out onto my roof, a favorite pastime of ours, to simply talk about the meaning of life. He brought his camera. We believed that we were unlocking and documenting the secrets of the universe together, things that our parents would never be able to understand. My father did not allow me to be alone in a room with Boris. We had to be supervised. Not because my father didn't trust me, but because he never trusted Boris. And he refused to tell me exactly why, other than he doesn't know when to shut up. I wonder if my father was unconsciously picking up on Boris's otherness. And though he was unaware that Boris was gay at the time, that he sensed that something was off by his standards, and it repelled him, along with most adults in our homophobic post-Soviet aquarium. Ironically, Boris was aching to come out to me on this very fateful evening and had several false starts which increased my anxiety to new levels each time. I have to tell you something, he started. Okay, but it's going to change your life forever. It's going to change everything. Is it bad? Sort of. What is it? Never mind, there's not enough time tonight. I'll tell you another time. No, come on, tell me. Your parents are going to be home any minute. He looked back through the glass of my bedroom window. I can feel it. They're going to be back at like 2, I replied. They always stay out late when Pasha visits. No, we're going in. I have to go home, Boris insists. I resist. I never want it to be over. As we straddle the windowsill, I hear it. The twist of the doorknob. My father's booming laugh. Boris's eyes lock with mine, pure terror in our pupils. He's gonna kill me. Boris lets out half whimper, half whisper. This is the end. I'm gonna jump. He indicates down to my yard, 8 feet below. Are you insane? I bark at him. I pull him back into my room, and in a panic, I shove him into my closet. And I shut the door. Stay in here and be quiet. I say. I quickly shut off all the lights. I climb into bed, straining to hear their conversation over the pounding of my heart. They're drunk. My uncle's heavy steps echo up the walls as he begins to dance with the balloon sculpture in my living room that we bought for his arrival. And my breath eases. All I have to do is wait for them to calm down, go to sleep, and then I can sneak Boris out and nobody will even notice. Whose shoes are these? The question rings out, unanswered. My stomach seizes, and suddenly everything feels very hot. Tanya! I hear him begin to get agitated. Whose shoes are these? Probably Katya's, my mom says without looking. You think I'm an idiot? These are not Katya's. Katya! Katya! Katya, come down here. I'm fucked. Katya! Katya! I slowly get up, making myself look as sleepy as possible. I walk out onto the landing, rubbing my eyes. Что? I say sleepily. He points his finger up at me, and I can see the flush in his cheeks. I descend the stairs, slowly. Whose shoes are these? He asks, brandishing Boris's sneakers in my face. No? My mother appears behind him. She's mouthing something. I think that I make out her lips saying, make something up. They're dance shoes. I lie. They're his sneakers. We were talking after soccer practice and I forgot them, so I brought them home and I'm going to give them back tomorrow. Dance shoes? He stares at me. Do you think I'm an idiot? No. Dan's shoes. Not dance shoes. Dan's shoes, my friend, Dan. You brought another man's shoes into my house? What? How could you do this? Unbelievable. You know what I'm gonna do with them? I'm throwing them in the garbage. You never do this again in my house. As my dad continues to yell, my uncle quietly approaches, bending over to pick something up out of view. Suddenly, he turns around and opens the front door. Whose shoes? Nobody's shoes, he says, throwing a pair of my mother's heels out the front door and onto our front lawn. He goes on. Whose shoes? Nobody's shoes. He throws my sneakers out into the night air. I stifle an incredulous laugh. My mother, upon registering what is happening, grows instantly agitated. Pasha, что ты делаешь? Перестань немедленно. She runs outside to retrieve the shoes, but he continues this game. And they start this bizarre dance, something between a factory and a clown act. My uncle is tossing shoes out the door to the tune of, whose shoes? Nobody's shoes. My mother is running and bringing them back inside over and over and over again. She does this 1 time, twice, 3 times before she finally explodes at him, the heel of her stilettos transforming into a weapon. Pasha retreats. His laughter carries him outside. This is the most fun that he's had in a really long time. Throughout this spectacle, 2 things have changed. My father has taken the shoes outside to follow through on his word and throw them in the garbage, and I have slowly and silently tiptoed backwards up the stairs towards my room. From the landing, I watch it happen. I see my mother enter, having retrieved the final pair of flats from the front lawn. She turns around and locks the door behind herself with a huff. The knot in my stomach tightens. She bends down, muttering disappointments and curses under her breath. As she tries to put all of the shoes back into their rightful place. My father approaches. I see the outline of his broad shoulders in the frosted glass outside of our front door. He tries the doorknob. It's locked. He knocks. My mother stands up, sighs, turns slowly towards the door. To me, she's a queen. She considers the door and then righteously walks away, leaving it locked. The following moments play in slow motion in my memory. My father's knocking turns into a banging, which turns into a pounding. Bang, bang, boom, boom, bam! Crash! The front door flies off of its hinges and lands on the bottom of the stairs. My father enters, his shoulders raised, practically snarling in anger, followed by Pasha slightly giggling. Tanya! He screams. Katya! I hear Boris whimper from the crack in the door of my closet. What's going on? Oh my God, Boris! He broke down the front door. I'm definitely gonna die. I'm dying, I'm dead. Just shut up and keep quiet. I shut the door and perk my ears to check in on the argument downstairs. It's no longer about me or about the shoes. Now it's about the door, respect, and my father feeling emasculated. But somehow, this is all related to the shoes. Pasha is attempting to mediate the situation to no avail. I slowly walk downstairs to find my mother crying in the bathroom, which is often where I find her, mid-fight. I ask if she can come with me, because I need to tell her something. We walk past the kitchen to my bedroom, hand in hand. She sits at the foot of my bed. I climb in, wrapping the blanket around my legs. Mom? Ну что, Катюш? Mom, the shoes, they're Boris' shoes. Boris, he's in my closet. The words fall out of my mouth like stones. What? Oh, Katya, my mother sighs, looking over her shoulder. Так ты хочешь мне сказать, что в шкафу сейчас сидит Боря? You're trying to tell me Boris is sitting in your closet. Duh. She gets up, opens the closet door to reveal a curled up Boris, looking like a discovered mouse, slightly shaken, eyes squinting to adjust to the sudden burst of light. She lets out a little chuckle. Привет, Таня, says Boris. Привет, Боря, says my mother. This what we gonna do. Boris, this is a pillow. Everyone go to sleep. I put Papa to sleep. I come get you. I drive you home, okay? My mother, the superhero, speaks. We silently nod in agreement and watch her go downstairs, unable to understand why she's not more upset with us, but also thankful that in the midst of this insanity, we will live. Boris, I whisper into the darkness. Yeah? This is crazy. Yeah, he replies. My head lands on the pillow, and I hear my dad's footsteps on the stairs, the creaking of the beams announcing his arrival as he ascends. Our conversation is brief. He wants me to understand why it is so disrespectful to bring another man's shoes into his house. And I find 10 different ways to reassure him I understand how horrible I am for not knowing that this was going to be a problem in the first place and how it will never happen again. I make it through the trial. Ну хорошо, Катюш, спи. Утро вечера мудренее. As he stands, he reminds me that the morning is wiser than the night. I agree. He leaves. Boris? No reply. He must be asleep. I, too, find myself slowly drifting off into the night. Hours later, my mother, the superhero, would creak softly up the stairs to wake Boris, and for the first time this evening, to finally let him out of the closet. He bounded down the stairs and out of the doorframe into the night air and straight into my mother's minivan as she whisked him home before dawn. The shoes? I'm sure you're wondering what happened to the shoes. They were retrieved from the trash and returned secretly to Boris as the final leg of Operation Sneakers. He would wear them for months, not having been able to come up with a good enough reason why he needed another pair of sneakers, and throughout the following months would bring them up into my room whenever he came to visit, so as to avoid any possibility of being discovered. This is how our friendship survived, and how we learned to hide from our parents, through our parents. This story is one I'm actually sharing publicly for the first time. Many of these stories, which feel like scenes out of an imaginary Russian immigrant reality TV show, are privately famous. They belong to this shkatulka, a wind-up jewelry box in my heart, one that I'm slowly beginning to unlock and peer inside. Boris and I remain friends until this very moment. Our lives and our American stories are still so new and so young, they're happening in the moment. The ending to this story is happening today, with it being born into the world. You are all a part of it. Welcome to the family. You can leave your shoes at the door when you come over.
Hello, my name is Marta Zmoira. I immigrated to the US from Odessa, Ukraine when I was 2.5. And this is my story. Sasha is babysitting me, again. My parents are with their friends, God knows where. Super social people, my parents. Sasha, my 16-year-old brother, isn't very happy to be saddled with his sulky 7-year-old sister. All he wants is to be social too, to go out with his friends, go to the movies, or stand outside, stand around with other smelly teenage boys, pretending to be cool. He has to feed me the lunch Mom left for us. That is part of the babysitting requirement. Sitting at the kitchen table in our Ocean Avenue apartment in Brooklyn, I watch as Sasha pours about half a bottle of olive oil into a frying pan and heats up the kotletki, the cutlets that Mama or Babushka made earlier. They're always making something in that kitchen, an endless production line of foods I don't like very much, because they're nothing like what my friends get to eat. Instead of burgers and mac and cheesy things, I face never-ending cutlets, meaty, gelatinous stews and soups. These meals are only barriers to doing important things, like playing with my dog Buba, watching I Dream of Jeannie, talking on the phone with my friends. Even homework is better than having to sit at the table and finish, oh my God, how, everything on my plate. You see, I am what is known as a plachoy yedok, a bad eater. This condition elicits terror among most Russian grandmas. My brother feeds me out of responsibility, but my grandmother is the one who follows me around the apartment with something or other on a fork. Liver and onions, oily fried potatoes with mushrooms and onions. Always something and onions, with Buba trailing expectantly behind. Also, there can't be a meal without dessert, and not the good kind. It has to be fruit. I'm about to put up a real fight, but the phone rings. His friends are going to the movies, and he better come too. I can't. I'm babysitting. But then, an epiphany. Can I bring my sister? I've never been to a movie before. I have no idea what to expect, but this is getting exciting. I put on my favorite red and white polka dotted party dress, but then a container emerges. The strawberries are coming with the required dessert. Okay, fine. A small price to pay for seeing a movie in an actual theater. The seats are velvet, red and bouncy, and soft to the touch. 2 of me could fit in one, but it's a little too dark for my taste. Thank God my brother is sitting next to me. The film starts. Frankly, I don't know what's happening on the screen. I'm just happy to be there. A boat, a fisherman, lots of water, swimmers. I eat an obligatory strawberry, juice dripping down my fingers, when an impossibly giant fish with too many teeth pops out of the water and starts eating people. This is the movies? Movies are horrible. One hand holds the forgotten strawberry, the other hand placed firmly over my eyes. Can't help but take occasional terrified peeks through the gaps of my fingers as the shark turns the water red with blood. Yes, Jaws was the first movie I saw in a theater. Ever since, I refuse to watch horror films, although I have been known to sneak strawberries into a movie from time to time. We came to Brooklyn in the mid-1970s. I was a baby, really, not even 3 years old. My one and only memory of Ukraine, where I was born, is also my first memory. Not so much a memory as a color, orange. An orange couch in my great aunt Ida's apartment. Ida was the youngest of my grandmother's 3 sisters, and the one who stayed behind. Our immediate family, my parents, my brother, and I, was one of the first to leave. But eventually, most of our family and friends followed suit. As Jews, we were begrudgingly being allowed to leave the Soviet Union as religious dissidents. Many in our circle came to New York like us. Others settled in Berlin, in Sydney, Israel, of course, and many were scattered throughout the United States. But for me, my motherland is distilled into the color of my great aunt Ida's couch. My father was an engineer in the Soviet Union. Like so many in a place where building and growing the state's infrastructure was seen as a moral imperative. Papa worked as chief engineer in a factory that built grain elevators. He also did not believe the Soviet propaganda machine that told us people were starving and dying on the streets of America. It's possible to hear a story so many times, you start believing you remember it as your own. I've been told this story all my life. Many late evenings in our apartment in Odessa, Papa would crouch behind the sofa with a radio set to the lowest possible volume, a blanket over his head to mute out the sound from prying ears. He was trying to catch bits of the BBC's Voice of America program in the moments it got through the scramblers, a subversive act that could have landed him unceremoniously in prison. Those radio sessions must have given my father the push to take his family and leave everything and everyone we knew and loved. My babushka, my mother's mother, came over 3 years after we had arrived in New York. Because I was so little when we left, I didn't remember her. We pick her up from JFK, Papa navigating the blue Chevy Impala with Mama in the front passenger seat, and me in the back with my new, or new to me, grandmother. The entire trip home from the airport, I stand straight up on the back seat, staring at her without saying a word. I won't take my eyes off her. How can this stranger be the closest person in my mother's life, and by extension, the closest person in mine, I think? She laughs at me for staring, but I'm mesmerized. Fiona is my best friend. I know this, even though I've only been in kindergarten at the Rabbi Harry Halpern Day School for about a week, and I've only just met her. I know this because Fiona has a blue raincoat I admire. It's the color of the sky, and giant green eyes that make her look surprised all the time. And she doesn't speak a word of English either. Like me, she doesn't understand and can't speak with any of the other children or teachers. The teacher is kind, she smiles, and tries to communicate by talking slowly and moving her hands around, miming her way through. At every opportunity, Fiona and I hang out in a nook of the large playroom together, happily jabbering at one another in our respective languages. She speaks only Turkish, and I Russian. But it doesn't stop us. We stay close to one another. We find that some words are the same in both languages. Chai is tea, ananas is pineapple in both Turkish and Russian. We play this game by pointing at objects and naming them in our respective languages, giggling when we find a word in common. Learning English comes quickly, especially with I Love Lucy after school every afternoon on the small black and white, propped up on a stool in our living room. Babushka, please don't speak to me when you drop me off at school today. Please don't talk. Please, I beg. She's walking me to school, my hand in hers protectively. She walks me to school every day because my parents are working. So far, it's been okay. Babushka would drop me off at the school gate, and I'd go off to class, no one the wiser. But today, she has to hand a form in to my teacher. She knows a handful of words in English, but if she speaks to me in Russian, as she's prone to do, my life will be over. Everyone will know that I am different. We walk into class, and she goes right up to Mrs. Guntarsky, says hello, and hands her the form. I hang back expectantly, praying that's the end of the exchange. Grandmother, Mrs. Guntarsky inquires. Grandmother, Babushka announces in her thickest Russian accent, smiling proudly. I am mortified. I could sink into the floor. Mrs. Guntarsky looks confused for a moment and breaks into perfect Russian to speak with her. I had no idea she spoke Russian at all, and she had no clue that I did either, or where my family came from. I'd been hiding it well. They continue to speak animatedly to one another while we students get settled at our desk. I see Mrs. Guntarsky hike up her shirt sleeve and point casually to the numbers tattooed in muddled blue ink on her left forearm. I don't know what it means. Not yet.
We're going to do a short intermission, but I just want to say thank you so much for amazing writing. When I started this project, all the Blueprint Fellows and the Blueprint leadership were saying, yes, once you start doing this project, you will see all these people will help you and they will appear. And at first I was like, okay, I'm still alone, still on my computer alone, and then it happened. They appeared, they really did, and it was amazing. And yeah, and I didn't know any of these writers, and there were 3 other writers who performed at the last performance, and their stories were also amazing. So please enjoy the wine and their intermission, and we'll come back and I will perform for you.